Well, this is a subframe out of a first generation G35, aka before the '07 to '08 models. I got this subframe pretty cheap, but it's in horrible shape and just about everything on it needs to be replaced. Quite frankly, the only thing I actually wanted was the subframe itself. But I have a new replacement for almost everything on here, including the actual subframe bushings themselves, because they're in really bad shape. I got new control arms, I got used knuckles slash hub assemblies, and I even have a different differential, which is going to be going in here to match up with the gearing of the manual transmission that's going in the Q. The only replacement part that I haven't ordered yet that I'm still going to need is going to be a sway bar, because the one on here is pretty toasted. I don't know, I'll see if I can sandblast it or something similar, but it looks pretty rusty to me. So I did get all four of the rear subframe bushings removed from the subframe, and the front two, closer to the front of the car, they came right out, no problem. The rear two, these were super corroded. Even the bores themselves look different from front to back with just the condition of them overall. For the replacement bushings, I got Prothane bushings. And these actually were cheaper than the energy suspension bushings. I don't even think I could find the OEM bushings again because they're so old at this point, but I probably wouldn't have bought them anyway because they probably would have been super expensive. Now, I did not film the removal of these rear two bushings at all. It took me about an hour and a half. I mean, you could find plenty of videos on YouTube for how to remove these bushings. It's been done plenty of times. So hopefully if you do this, you don't have the same amount of problems that I did. subframe is out of the car completely. It's not that many bolts. You have the 4 main bolts. You have to disconnect your coils or your strut assemblies, whatever you want to call them. And then you've got these weird little arms on the side. Those had to come out too, and your brake calipers. And then other than that, it's mostly just the ABS sensor wire. Super easy to disconnect. And after that, I mean, it pretty much just plops out of the car. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get the G35 subframe into the car. And this is just the bare subframe, no differential, no control arms, knuckles, etc. I am going to start building out the subframe on the car instead of building the whole assembly and then putting it on the car as one piece. I know that the bolt pattern is exactly the same, so I should have no issues with getting this thing up onto the car. Yeah, if you've ever lifted one of those, you know how heavy they are. They're very dense. All right, I just got done doing this axle. This differential came out of probably a 370Z. I don't know if it came out of a 370Z or a G37, one of the two. Some R200s will have threaded holes on the axle stubs, and then some of them will just be a straight through. This one had threaded holes, and I did not have the bolts for it. I really didn't feel like buying the bolts, so I just drilled straight through, and that allowed me to use some bolts that I already had. You need to make sure that you use the right size drill bit when you do this. This is a 13/32 drill bit, and that is pretty much the perfect size so that you don't drill these oversized. I got all these bolted in, torqued them down. I'm gonna drill out the other side now and get that axle mounted up, and then we'll put the axle nuts on. Alright, so I got the axle nuts torqued on there on both sides. Did 150 foot-pounds for these, or maybe a little over. This screwdriver trick works great if you want to torque axle nuts in the air. You just slot it into your rotor, and then you just back it up against the caliper. I gotta say, I find it absolutely hilarious that a subframe from a 2004, 2003 car will just bolt right into a car from 2020. And this is one of the reasons that I love working on Nissans. Same thing with the transmission. I mean, the transmission just bolts into the car. All right, let's talk about swapping out the rear subframe and why you would do it, or why maybe you just shouldn't bother doing this. You get a lot of different gearing options when you go with a G35, G37, 350Z, 370Z differential. So you can go all the way down to, I believe it's 313s if you use a Pathfinder, or you can go all the way up to, I believe you can get 408s for a 350Z differential. Even if you are still running an automatic transmission in your Q50, this is still beneficial if you want to, you know, increase your acceleration a little bit. I mean, I think the factory gearing is 2.96 or 313, depending on your model. I believe the red sports are 313 or 311, something like that. I don't know what they are exactly, but they're tall gears, I can tell you that much. Now, another thing that's nice is the differentials for a G35, G37, they're really, really cheap. And you can get them from a bunch of different junkyards. You can get them from everybody's beloved Facebook Marketplace. I got the differential for my car for, I believe it was $150, which actually kind of felt a little expensive. But they are 3.69, 3.73, whatever they are. There's so many different numbers I can't remember. And it came with the factory VLSD. So if you want the 3.69s, you are gonna need a manual car. The automatics, you can get them with a VLSD, but I think they are 3.357. So still an improvement from the Q50, Q60s. So another advantage to doing this, if you see this as an advantage, is you lose a little bit of track width in the rear.
which is really nice because then you can run wider wheels and tires, or you can just run more aggressive offsets in general. I believe you lose about 1.5 to 2 inches of track width. It depends on which subframe you have, and also for the Q50s, the track width differs between the all-wheel drive models and the rear-wheel drive models. Not by a lot, but it differs a little bit. One other small advantage is if you go with a G35 or a 350Z subframe, the first generation G35s, before they were just G37s, if you get one of those, they are aluminum, which is what I got. So this is sort of a positive and a negative. I mean, you're losing a little bit of weight back there, which depending on what your car is going to be used for, that could be good or bad. But also just in terms of corrosion and whatnot, aluminum is obviously going to be better than a steel subframe. I changed out pretty much every single arm on the subframe, either with a new aftermarket replacement, an OEM replacement, or I went with adjustable arms. So the arms that I got were from Kinetics, and I also got some arms from ISR. I got toe arms because the factory toe arms on a G35 and 350Z subframe are bucket arms, and obviously I was not gonna run a divorced setup in the rear. So you can just run the bucket arms and not put anything in them, obviously, but I wanted the adjustability anyway. So the ABS wires, they plug right in. You're going to use the ABS sensors from the G35 or G37, whatever is on the differential. You're going to use those ABS sensors, and they will plug right into the Q50 plug for the ABS. If you're just doing a basic manual swap on your car, you can actually run the factory rear subframe and you can get your OEM drive shaft modified. They're just going to have to modify the front end of the shaft. You're going to get slightly better gas mileage going that way. Your car's going to feel a little slower though because of how tall the gearing is. If you want a little more interchangeability with your gearing ratios, it's actually cheaper to just go this route and swap out the entire subframe versus getting new gears for the Q50 differential. I know that sounds ridiculous, but gear sets are really expensive, and Q50s and Q60s, they don't even come with a LSD from factory. So you are going to have to buy an LSD, and then you're going to have to buy gear sets, and once you're done with that, you're looking at over $1,000. I think I picked up this subframe for 150 bucks, and then everything else I needed was, I want to say, less than $500. So you're talking less than $700-ish. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, like the video, comment if you have questions, or if you just want to help the algorithm, because it's pretty brutal on YouTube, actually. That's it for this one. I will see you guys on the next one. We got a couple more things to do on this car: brakes, coilovers, etc. Maybe actually drive the car at some point. That would be fun too, right? So, see you guys next week.